Welcome back. You're watching Uongozi Today here on Morning Prime, the 10th of May 2024. And today is a big day in the country as we, of course, observe or try to make effort to plant trees. It has been dedicated primarily for that, but more so, the president has said also, as we continue to plant trees today, also we stand in solidarity with the families that lost their loved ones. We saw yesterday in Mai Mahiu where there was a teary moment, many feeling, of course, the effects of the floods. Many children, 28 of them, we've lost them with these torrential rains. And in light of that, we, the panelists, are here, and myself, we want to stand in solidarity with the families as well. And I will request our panelists just to stand in honor of the 229 lives that we've lost so far, and just observe a moment of silence with them. Thank you. Thank you. That was 1 minute of silence just to stand in solidarity with the families that lost their loved ones as well. Just to take you back also, we have the editorial cartoons as well that sets the segue to our discussion this morning. And I would love Baraka Muluka to just begin with that editorial cartoon there to just decipher it for us in light of what has been ongoing. Also, 13th of May is the D-Day when we will know whether the spotless or the stubborn stain of Linturi will be there or not.
It looks like a washing machine.
If we may just have it in full, Director.
Yes, it does look like a washing machine. And I do not know whether he's being processed through it so that he comes out looking clean, sanitized.
But the washing machine is a select committee, and its parliament is turned out to be a laundry sort of washing machine.
Yes, you know, the washing machine could sanitize, but it could also satanize, yeah, so that at the end of it all is going to come out either clean, sanitized.
It can sanitize or satanize.
Yes.
Okay, that's a new one for me. This is from Satan.
No, from the part of his philosophy.
you see, you see, the man has actually been satanized. Yeah, when you look at what has been said about him and so on and so forth. Yeah. So he has got to go through this committee, and when he comes out of this process, he's either going to be judged, determined to be innocent, in which case he's clean. But you know, sanitization is also sometimes about window dressing, making things look like they have gone through a due process. But in the end, it's just mechanics, and those mechanics can bring a verdict and say that he's clean. So he is therefore sanitized without necessarily that which is been accused of being untrue. Converse is also possible, that you could find a hostile environment which fails to look at things objectively, and therefore it satanizes you.
All right, let's hear from Kipruto Rabkirwa.
Well, Lebal, it's very useful that this process has begun. And I do hope that we shall go through the due process and we'll get more information about what is bedeviling the agriculture sector, more so insofar as the fertilizer importation and distribution and acquisition is concerned. I have been following very keenly, and a number of things have come out. Yes, Mithika Linturi may be a victim of a wider web of people who are corrupt. But of course, he has ill-advised himself by the way he has behaved, by one time trying to define the form of fertilizer, whether it is a soil moisturizer, soil conditioner, or soil or being substandard. All those were just gimmicks that he was trying to do to exonerate himself. The second issue is that it's also important for the history of our country that such a process is given the necessary attention, so that at the end of the day, if the minister is blameless, he should not just carry the burden on behalf of other people. But if he is, he has something to answer, he should be made to answer, and decision is taken at a higher level. Even if, let's say, he was seen to be blameless, I think the president will do him a lot of duty to ease him out of that particular ministry, because in the eyes of many farmers, including myself, I no longer feel confident that whatever he's doing in the ministry is the right thing. Of course, we know he has 35 other cases, so this is one of the cases. But being one of the cases, it is one of the heaviest because it is sabotage against food security, it's sabotage against the very integrity of this country, and also sabotage against the future of our nation, knowing that next year we are likely to have some famine, given the pattern of rains. Remember, in 1961 we had the same rains, and subsequent to that we had serious food shortage the following year, 1962. So given the same pattern, and science does not lie, we are likely to have a lot of challenges next year. Because the crop called maize, for example, which is a national crop, if you put it under water for 24 hours, it will jack its growth. It will not grow as usual, and it will have depressed the harvest that we expect. He's talking about 67 million bags. Those are bags in his mind. The actual truth is the maize harvest this year is likely to go lower because of the floods. Finally, I'm also able to demonstrate and also assist other Kenyans to realize that a minister, just like in the old constitution, is not an accounting officer. Because last week we had the same challenge. But I went through the constitution and I went through other consultations, and I still realize the principal secretary in any ministry is the accounting officer. The minister is in charge of policy, is accountable to the president and to the public, but when it comes to issues of administration and dealing with day-to-day running of the ministry, it is the principal secretary. So I was trying to correct that notion, because we are here responsible for the facts that we present. Last week somebody was almost presenting facts to the contrary. But looking at the same constitution, the practice of the old still obtains up to now.
Well, I think that's a very good point in which...
Well, we're saying last week, somebody was challenging with the old constitution. I think the challenge was
he's the one who said... No, but he's the one who said that in this dispensation, cabinet secretaries are accounting officers.
No, he was not the one.
I'm not the one. Let's speak of the fact.
It was the other panel.
When I was talking about section 22 of the old constitution, where the minister was able to direct, and the PS was able to run the ministry under the direction of the minister, somebody say to the contrary. So I informed myself with this constitution,
and I came to realize my position was right.
Yeah.
Still, a minister only directs and is accountable to the president and by extension to the public, but is not an accounting officer.
The accounting officer.
But I think we established that last week.
Somebody questioned my...
Well,
he questioned, but we clarified. It doesn't matter.
Much,
yes.
Especially since the person is not here.
Yeah.
What matters is that Waziri has brought the
clarifications is make it very limpid for us.
And beyond that, to then ask ourselves whether our cabinet secretaries do not sometimes overreach themselves and start appearing to go into spaces that do not belong to them. If you are a CS, you need to know your coordinates and operate strictly within those coordinates so that you do not find yourself being in a situation where you say, you misled me. When you tell somebody in a court or before a committee like this one that you misled me, it means that you also took some action which went beyond the definition of your role as a policy makers. So do CSS also sometimes stray outside their coordinates?
And Dibal, what we want to say is that we want to put this in context. There are three issues that we need to look at. The first one is who is responsible for the affairs of a ministry. Responsibility for the affairs of the ministry rests with the cabinet secretary. And who is accountable for the financial and fiduciary responsibility in a ministry. That responsibility is joined, whereas the PS is accountable for the executive, the CS is accountable to his appointing authority on matters of how well that ministry is run. So there's no way you can remove a cabinet secretary from being responsible and equally being accountable, unless you're just looking at it from the issue of the policy of accounting officer and so on. So accountability and responsibility vest and rest the cabinet secretary. Having said that, what actions did Linturi take in this instance that even make him more culpable? He undertook in public to absolve the mistake and even made the pledge to suggest that actually he knew that the fertilizer was okay except that it was substandard. Now he must take responsibility for such statements. Otherwise he would have said, look, I am not aware, I am waiting for lab analysis, I'm waiting for technicians to tell me exactly what happened. But in this respect, he took on the responsibility to tell us that he knows that this was very good stuff that needed to stabilize the soils, and therefore the kind of stones that were in this thing were, so he went on to explain something which therefore must make us hold him
responsible.
And I think, Dibar, the challenge we have as a country is like we are very good in interpretation of terms, interpreting terms like accountability, responsibility. I think these things are interrelated, in my view. I think the principal secretary is the accounting officer, meaning he oversees the day-to-day running of the ministry. I think that's what it means. But at the same time, the cabinet secretary is the overall person or in charge of the ministry in terms of policy making and giving direction of the ministry. In fact, is the key person in the ministry as the cabinet secretary. But at the same time, if we have to define our roles, there is also there are managing directors of state parastatals within the ministry, and these are maybe the third lower level from the cabinet secretary to the principal secretary, the directors and so forth. So I think what is happening is that I think the minister, cabinet secretary for agriculture and livestock, Linturi, is being sanitized or maybe satanized I don't think he's satanized, is being
Be careful to use other
sanitized.
people's
I don't
language.
want to use his language
As we have trouble.
as the cartoon was
My
showing
language is
there,
universal.
because he has the highest responsibility in the ministry as a cabinet secretary. Not that Mimbi is the accounting officer of the ministry, but having the highest responsibility as the policy holder in that ministry, the one who owns the overall policy of the ministry and gives the direction of the ministry. But you see, the challenge we have as a country is that we may get the wrong person to go through the processes of the parliament as a procedure, but then we may end up, releasing him scot-free, because really he may not be the person who was dealing with the procurement. There are several levels that a fertilizer went before it was distributed to the farmers. But he has the highest responsibility as the person in charge of the ministry, because now farmers are complaining, and they are complaining to the CS. But if you go technically, I think Professor here is a professor of law who advised us that when you go now into legal terms and interpretations, then that's why Linturi will say, I'm not, he said, I'm not what? I'm not
The accounting officer.
the accounting officer.
Or the procuring of
Or the procuring officer.
And he's not the fertilizer expert,
I'm
according
not
to
a
the Daily
fertilizer
Today.
expert. And these are jargons that you are going to use
Yeah.
so that you are set free.
Yeah, but
And then the person who did the work is quiet. Who is in charge of approving the quality of fertilizer? He was also involved in the process. Who are these people who signed the procurement officer, procurement procedures, and those tenders were awarded and all that? It's a long process before actually you move into the minister. I think that's where the challenge is.
But we need
That's
a
where
question,
the big
because
challenge
even as
is.
he was raising who
Yeah.
are the accounting officers,
Yeah.
we know some of officials
Yeah.
from the CEO,
Yeah.
from the store department of NCPB, they're in the slummers right now.
Yeah.
Right? But we need to question also, why was Linturi not, because previously Linturi was to be in jail until some intervention happened. While all these people were being collected to go to the NCPB, CEO, and the accounting of, and the rest of officials, he was also part of it. Was there any intervention from State House that sort of made him not to be actually in the slummers? Because there is a battle on whether this particular matter should be with the committee or it should be actually in the courts. If it goes the court way, maybe, I don't know. Because
There are
the people in court.
There are people in
But
court.
he is not in court.
Yes.
But he was to also
be.
be in court, not on the select committee.
Yeah.
But either way, it's a trial.
Either way, it's a
It's
trial.
a trial. He could be found guilty in this instance.
But what I'm saying is, there has been a battle for it to be in the select committee other than the courts.
Okay, it's a political process.
That's what I'm saying. It's a
Impeachment-
political process.
Impeachment is a trial equivalent to even a court trial, because when Parliament sits in a select committee like that, or Senate, it does then convert itself into a trial process.
Indeed.
That's why now you see all this. Now it's possible that if he is found impeachable or culpable, he can be three things: dismissed, or recommendations can be made that he be tried in court. So that's possible. So it's not a clearing house, but for political reasons, this is very good for optics. As to whether he'll be cleared, as to whether he'll be found culpable, this is also part of the useful political process. Now, I want to use this opportunity to say that there's nothing wrong with what is going on. In fact, what Linturi is doing, or what we are doing around Linturi, justifies why we will say come end of this year that our harvest is low, therefore we now need to import. So people who are preparing to import already are having licenses for importation. So what it then tells you is that we have our priorities upside down. We are looking at every opportunity to make money, not to make Kenya food secure.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. If you flip it that way, people are looking on the long view on how
This
they can
fertilizer
make
is
in
about
money.
making money.
All right,
See,
Barak, let's say from Barak, we'll come to yes.
Okay.
First, I don't want to cast aspersions or impute ill motive. I just want to look at the facts as they are, even if I should eventually turn out to be a little naive. I think Parliament has got its role, its duties, and it shouldn't stop just because somebody else is arresting people elsewhere. And therefore, I think Minister Mithika Linturi is rightly before an organ of Parliament, going through a legitimate process of law as spelled out within the necessary instruments of law in the country, and that in the fullness of time they will come up with their verdict one way or the other, and they will present the facts for the country to reflect upon. In the event that this gentleman is found liable by the committee, the matter, I expect, as it should, will come before the whole House. And even if they do not consider that he's liable, they still bring a report which the entire House will debate and make its final verdict one way or the other. In the event that he's liable, we would expect that he's not only separated from the cabinet, but that also subsequent stages of the law would follow, including him being arraigned before the courts. But administratively, I think he jumped the gun. He started saying things that he should not have been saying at all. Things that at that stage, as I think both Dr. Law and Mheshimiwa Kirwa have stated, were too early. He showed his hand a little too early, calling the journalists who broke the story crooks. I recall seeing him on TV saying it is this crook who is called John Allan Nam who is deceiving the world, that we have fake fertilizers. There's nothing like that. And then he gave all those explanations. You cannot give those explanations in your capacity as minister, as cabinet secretary, and a few days later start telling the country that I'm not an expert in those spaces. So what were you speaking as? Those are the questions that we would like to see coming out, coming through very clearly through this process, and that in the end, we should therefore be able to be convinced as Kenyans that this gentleman is liable or not. Regarding food and food security, it's not just going to happen next year, it's going to start this year. By the time we are moving towards September, October, Christmas, the country is going to be undergoing a serious food crisis. And we would expect that the minister in charge of agriculture and the entire agricultural community in the country, the food security, the people in Interior, State House, they should be doing something about the food security situation in the country. And because the minister is under siege, he's making that arm of government weak. It's limp. And for purposes of securing the food situation in the country, one does not even need to tell the president, please move this person aside. Let there be somebody who is running with this very important task.
Right. Honorable Kirwa.
Well, mine was simply to clarify the situation, but it has generated more debate than I anticipated. Yes, a minister must be ultimately responsible for whatever happens in his ministry. But it's also good to realize that there are many things that happen in a ministry that the minister only comes to know when a scandal does arise. Why am I saying that? Under the National Cereals and Produce Board Act, it is very clear who are the representatives in the board. There is either the PS of Agriculture, PS Office of the President, PS Minister of Finance, either attend the board meetings in person or through their representatives. And therefore, any procurement that takes place at that particular stage, those are the people who have information on daily basis. I was not trying to absolve Mithika Linturi from blame. And you see, the only problem is that he misdirected himself by behaving that he knew more, that now, in the fullness of time, he has realized he should have kept quiet until he had information about all the facts. Either he was misadvised at the beginning,
or he was just naive,
or he was misdirecting himself. And that's why I'm coming to the inevitable conclusion that Mithika Linturi, whether parliamentary committee is going to absolve him, is no longer tenable for him to be in that particular ministry, given the reasons Barak has given. Because it's a very important docket. It can be eased out, not necessarily to be sacked, because ultimately this scandal resides within State House. Because you remember there was a meeting of some individuals, including the director of KEBS, some 2 individuals who are not known, only to realize they are the people who are dealing with this fertilizer, MD, National Cereals and Produce Board, PS Agriculture, and a few other individuals under the purview of head of public service. This is information that is in the public domain as we talk, which means this thing, either when it was blown into full view of the public, some people were trying to manage information. So the government should be equally ashamed of the position they took. But in the process, Mithika Linturi, if I were him, I would request the president, ease me out of this ministry. I don't know which ministry should go, but in the eyes of the public, his guilt, or in the court of public opinion, is as guilty as accused.
I want to remind him that in Kenya, people don't resign. Somebody said they would rather die than resign.
But eventually resign. Eventually resign.
Yeah, but Linturi would rather die
than resign. But you see, nobody has died and come back. So for me, I would rather resign.
This what we're seeing playing in a public gallery. There's so many nuances underneath, and it's layered up in so much, not of a mystery, but of involvement of so many people, that it will just be a fall guy of one guy, Linturi, who will be taking all this, flack at the end of the day. But the question is then, like, in the management of information, because information also came to hand that we have his ministry, or him being the figure of that ministry, trying to manage the information, telling the supplier to come and have a press conference, recall the fertilizer, of which the supplier completely refused to actually go with the plot that the ministry had at the end of the day. So if he had known that this mystery is bigger than, as I say, is not responsible directly, is responsible, that is the debate. He must have known the facts or he's part of this particular whole scheme, and the scheme was not done without his knowledge, or the scheme was done without his knowledge and now he's being implicated. You want to tell me he had no sodding idea of what was really happening, or is not part of, or his skin is not really in the game?
No, with the risk of being called alligator by Baraka Muluka.
Alligator was in what context? I forget.
It was in the context that when the alligator comes from the sea and says the whale is unwell, then you must believe the alligator, because he was in the sea.
The alligator has named himself.
Okay. No, I've not completed the story. In government, there are ministers that you know, the 21 or so. Also in government, there are individuals who wield slightly more power than even some of the ministers. And if you are not a minister who has no stand or has wobbly legs, you can easily be directed by people other than the president. And I feel that's why I've always maintained that this is a scheme that is beyond Mythica. But Mythica, perhaps, out of certain little conveniences means money, or out of feeling that these individuals are so important in his network,
Yes.
to be in the system, accepted to be part of that scheme. And the information he was getting, he should have gotten more information so that he can holistically process that information and see how to deliver to the public. But he was being given scant information and be allowed to be the front of the defense, and he was not a good advocate for the people who schemed this thing.
So, Dr. Martin Olo, do you think, even from the discretion of the president in choosing Linturi for this particular ministry, right? He was chosen strategically?
Perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody
Strategically?
in this,
Yeah.
yes.
There was a rhyme and reason behind his choosing to be in this ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody in the cabinet, this present cabinet, as indeed any other cabinet, serves at the pleasure of the appointing authority, and that responsibility vests and rests with the president himself. To the extent that if the president was not appointing Dibal, there's no way Dibal would be in the cabinet. And if Dibal was the suitable candidate, that is the person who will serve. So Linturi fits the political schemes in Meru as well as in UDA. By the way, you haven't seen the yellow color in Linturi's tie and the lady and the shoes, the yellow shoes. There is a pattern here. He fits within that scheme. And even as you take him to that laundry machine, you still have responsibility over him. That's why you are he's being carried very clearly with a fat guy on the other side on the left, because he must also be gagged, because just in case he knows more and he could spill, because he has threatened to spill more. So Linturi serves at the pleasure of the president. And all that is happening, I'm sure, still fits within the design that the president has in place, because he is not going to sack Linturi. Linturi will survive this impeachment, because before that you saw a section of the Kenya Kwanza MP saying they should have left the Agricultural Committee to finish its work first. The Agricultural Committee had already been sorted. They knew that report wouldn't go far. But now this select committee is destabilizing that process. So they must go through this process, absolve Linturi, and he'll survive. Because ideally, what would have happened by now, if really the appointing authority had an issue with Linturi, he should have asked him to step aside pending all these issues. Remember, that happened in the case of Mweraria, that happened in other cases before. That when you can see that your cabinet secretary is embarrassing you, you can take a decision and say, look, guy, be away a little bit after you've gone through this process. If you are clean, come back. But that there is no such a move. It means that we can be sure that Linturi is going through a laundry process, and he'll come out. In fact, his beard may now be blacker by the time he comes out, now that it's totally gray. So he'll be refurbished, repackaged, and presented to us, because we are in a political dispensation.
But Dibar, that is in simplicity terms, because if you look at the Constitution, the opening phrase is that it's about the Constitution of Kenya, it's about the sovereignty of the people. So even if you are the appointing authority and you have appointed the cabinet secretary, there is also another under to go, because you need also to seek kind of guidance of what will the people behind Linturi say, because Linturi as a person, and this is not strange in this country, for all the CSCs and all the people in responsibility, anybody, even in the opposition, we have our backgrounds where we come from. These are our local politics. These are Kenyan politics. And when I stand as Jonah Kidiki, there are people behind me. I'm not just alone. And I speak on behalf of some people. So the cabinet secretary, Linturi, is only given a responsibility to be in charge of the ministry. So even if the president, for example, sacks him or whatever he takes or whatever action, he has not sacked all the people from Meru and where Linturi comes from. And they are going to question and ask, what's happening with our person? and we gave you, and you agreed to appoint him. So that's why you find a lot of consultations, but in simple terms, and very philosophical, you look at it, and what is supposed to be done, actually, that's what should be done.
But
Can it happen?
No.
That's why you see that machine.
No,
I've not finished the bar.
Okay.
That machine, you know, there's something that has come up in this discussion, which I want to borrow, though I'm told not to borrow.
Please borrow.
Satan is here.
Yeah, Satan. You know, it's a very important.
Let's get Satan out of this.
It will be satanized.
Because that machine is supposed to clean and
cleanse
and leave him spotless, you know, that without any spot. But you see, because you don't know what happens in that machine, because up there is written select committee. Yeah. So in the machine there is that select committee.
Yes,
and already you have tried to insinuate that some people are talking with these people, you know, do this for us and all that. So Linturi may come up very clean to the, you know, which is and to the surprise of many people. You know, people will say that because he is the one having the highest responsibility in the ministry, this man must be sacked, this action must be taken. But Linturi may go scot-free because this is a huge scheme. And you heard him say, if you listen to part of the clips of when he was defending himself, that he mentioned some people who are not in the committee, was not there. And he said these people were. So whether he knew or he didn't know, there were people there. And they were responsible for that. Therefore, we are not saying that exonerating him and say he is also free and is clean and all that, but he is among many who were involved in the whole scheme. So what happens in that state? The only option here I see, way forward, is maybe he can be transferred to another ministry or given another responsibility somewhere, and then other things can.
Before
if that is possible.
I just want to get clarification because you say that it is your people who presented him to the president.
Yeah, that we didn't know.
Which is not the reality on the ground that we saw with the general election. He never really made the cuts, so the people spoke. And him also getting this particular post, just a moment, him getting this particular post was just, you know, a launching pad or really a landing pad from the president.
Yeah, that is
maybe
okay.
Yes, so it is not appropriate for you to say that it is the people who spoke.
No, I haven't said that. I think I need to correct. I said our politics in Kenya, now away from Linturi, the way appointments are done, not only the cabinet secretaries, unless you are not a Kenyan like me, these appointments, the appointments that are done anywhere, not even in this government, in all government, even the government to come in future, they are based on our politics. Even those who are in opposition, doesn't matter even in the government, even those who are in opposition. You have seen people, they say, we come from this area. We cannot detach ourselves. That's the reality of the matter. What I'm trying to say here is simple term. It's only the Linturi is coming in the picture in the discussion of this matter. But we are talking about how we come, you know, how we live and how we associate with one another and the politics of this country. So we don't, this is African. And if I have to take you the bar to African tradition, I am because we are. So we belong to a community. We don't survive alone. And that complicates our politics in this country.
So how consequential is the input or political input of Linturi within the Meru politics right now?
Well, I don't want to be dragged in the local politics because I come from Meru, but let's talk of
which is very apropos for you to
another region. We can even talk of region. We can talk of any
no. Okay, yes, you in Meru. You cannot escape from that fact because I think you're the right person. I can't go to Moranga to ask about Meru politics. You are the right person to tell. So how consequential is what I've just asked you?
It's grave. Because Linturi, yeah, it will be grave because the other day, and this is in the public domain, the member of parliament of where he comes from, Nyambene, and not even, member of parliament and the deputy governor, he had a huge meeting and he was saying Linturi is clean. and
Yeah,
our person is being persecuted. I'm saying something that was in public domain. I'm not just creating a story. And it's from that I'm saying, if you look at somebody like deputy governor of a county, that is a very senior official in their county. It's not a small person. And he stands up in public and says, Linturi is not the only person who is involved in this scandal. And he said it in public. That's why I'm saying now it has some kind of consequence. Give me a minute. That unless that is addressed, then you find that people will also complain. And that's why I was saying it's not only Linturi, these are our politics. Because, and there's something I just want to say that, to explain that until when we detach policy and our local politics, we will never get to really actualizing full democracy. But you see, democracy is a process. It's not an event. So I think we are somewhere, and it's important that even a cabinet secretary can be summoned to a committee like that one, that rings a bell to people that this can happen. And I believe in future, people will be not only satanized, but they will be sanitized when they go that committee, and nobody will speak for them because they will carry their own responsibility.
Right.
But as we talk now, you find people are also attached to their communities. It's a very dangerous thing. I'm not saying that is the right thing to do, but I'm saying this is what is happening.
Is the reality.
Yeah, it's the reality on the ground.
That is
the problem.
Yeah,
that is the problem.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, first, I think it is absolutely wrong for us to allow certain things to happen, and just because we are afraid that a certain tribe, which we euphemize as a community, but basically a certain tribe is going to be mobilized to feel bad on behalf of an individual who, when he eats, does not eat with that tribe. He eats alone. You know, there's this place called the stomach, and each person has been given his or her own. And when you are eating, whether the things are properly earned, acquired, or whether they are stolen, you eat alone. But it's also possible that people could eat as a cartel. And it doesn't matter where they sit, as they plan and connive as a cartel, they become gangsters. That's why I was talking here the other day about gangster governance. And gangsters will be members of a gang. And it doesn't matter whether one of them will be the governor of Emmanuel and the other one the deputy governor of Emmanuel. And we come and we say we Emmanuelians are concerned that our son Barack is being persecuted. It is not Barack alone. That kind of gangsterism is what has gotten this country where it is. And as a people, and I'm happy that the professor begins by talking about sovereignty, we need to exercise our sovereignty by getting those who are privileged to occupy positions of government to realize that we do not put them in those positions so that they become a gang. Whoever the principal gangster may be, whoever the other gangsters supporting castes within the gang may be, the sovereignty belongs to the people, and it is wrong for gangsters in government to begin blackmailing the country by saying that this is our man. There are very many people from Emmanuel, and if Barack has been stealing, and the appointing authority, if it feels compelled to have an Emmanuelian within that portfolio, they can go and get hold of another competent and clean person from Emmanuel and put them in that office. It will be very tragic for us to get to a point where someone is being let off the hook out of fear that the people of Emmanuel are going to respond in a certain manner. The president of the Republic, who is the appointing authority, usually takes an oath of office. And in that oath of office, he says that he will serve without fear or favor. And here we seem to be finding ourselves inviting the thought that the appointing authority could serve in fear and favor.
All right. Fear or favor?
Yeah.
So let me. I'm just wondering, because there's an upcoming Limuru 3 that is coming, and of course, this is part of Mount Kenya. If I'm right, and I stand to be corrected, if maybe
are an annex of Mount Kenya.
they are an annex, they will not be part of this
an
Limuru.
appendix.
An appendix.
Yes, an epilogue.
A footnote.
An addendum.
One
One thing I like.
You can see the adjectives around it, so it really tells you much.
They come to jazz out of.
One thing I admire.
So if you're not part of what?
When Mount Kenya is mentioned, and you know, people's antennas are like wide open, because I don't know what.
But I've just been talking about the Manyodia.
Nobody even cares about the Manyodia.
We are saying that when it comes to Limuru 3, it's not about Meru.
But the concern will be focused in Mount Kenya. But the Manyodia is like nothing is going on.
The only fellow they have from there is
We'll come to Manila with the Tawe movement.
We have to do something about the Manyodia.
I just wanted to to assist Professor that Mount Kenya is not inconsequential, because it comprises 26% of the voters of Kenya. And therefore anybody commanding good support from Mount Kenya region is only that the mountain.
We need to be very specific. Specificity
Kenya,
is very important. Which Mount Kenya are we talking about?
The Mount Kenya that I know also includes the Meru people.
Yeah.
The mountain is not complete unless you take care of the eastern part of the mountain.
Sure.
And southeast, that is the Embu. And then you come now to the other side, the western side of Mount Kenya, which of course extends all the way to Nakuru, and to a certain extent Trans Nzoia, because that is the population that comprises what originally was Mount Kenya block, which is about 26% of the population of Kenya, and by extension 26% of the voters of Kenya. And therefore somebody commanding that block just needs to get another 14% from somewhere else, then collect some remnants, and that becomes the winning block. That is how the current president was able to mobilize the bloc and get to the presidency. But to assist the president, which I always admire, to assist, because we used to assist him with Barack until Barack ran away.
And you? Did you remain there?
I didn't know it was the tail end.
I think you were before Barack.
You're part of the advisors as well. We'll come to the issue of advisors as well, because I can see there is a loom.
I like that.
Yeah. So I think it would be good for the president to listen to all this, and that's why I was saying let us not condemn Ithika before we hear his part of the story. Now that the president has had the benefit, which we have also had, I may have my own conclusions, but I would advise the president to deal with this issue of fertilizer, a blow, by almost taking care of anybody who was involved in the network.
All of them.
And the issue of Ithika will be subdued in the process of that confusion. And if there was anything that we must replace him with somebody from Meru, there are many people from Meru, I don't want to name names, who are competent and they understand the sector better than even than me. So he will have a lot of replacement from Meru that will fit the bill, but deal with that issue of fertilizer, because it will eventually taint the name of the president, whether we like it or not. Because you cannot hold a meeting in State House or in the office of the president, almost to massage certain egos and information, and yet you say the president is not part of it. So for him to absolve himself from it, he must sack more than 5 people. Their names I don't want to name. including Mithika.
Oh, and that's why
there will be
no sacking.
That's why there will be no sacking, because it will take in a lot of people.
That's
so
what we are
we
saying.
will find a way of making sure that Mithika Linturi just escapes with some scratches and continues limping while serving. Because we cannot afford to destabilize.
That is not the tone that is also on the floor of the House.
In the
House, the House, it seems that now they're in solidarity. It is about the people on the ground. It's about their votes at the end of the day, and the people are watching, keeping their eyes peeled to make sure.
You see, I made a slight mistake. You see, if this committee says that the claims against Mithika are unsubstantiated, then that is the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the end of.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the truth. Or even if they came
yes,
and blamed Mithika, but the House resolves in their numbers.
Yes.
That's the end of the story. So the
story.
president will not have, unless he does it on his own motion.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the president.
Which he does not intend
But
to
he
do.
cannot.
Because he
cannot
would
deny
not-
it,
Okay,
you know.
because
so
It's
that's
not
the end.
possible.
Meaning what? Meaning that he stays or he goes.
There will be
He
no
stays.
other process, so
Indeed.
he stays.
Exactly, and that's why I was asking you before. The battle has been to whether have it in the courts or in the select committee.
You see
The problem
but
is
either way,
that-
but
either way.
the select committee will not lift any matter in court. The process in court will continue.
We'll continue.
We'll continue. Yeah.
Now, in fact, if I was to advise the president, there should have been this committee, but there should have been a special audit on the fertilizer issue.
Yeah.
So that the
now-
report of special audit comes at the same time with the report of the select committee.
Now, Dubai, let me be very clear as a lawyer now. Linturi in a court process is a flop from the word go.
It's a flop.
A flop. So you can't court process, criminal process, you will not fault the cabinet secretary. You will not find him guilty.
You're not filing
You will
guilty.
have some films
Of course.
charges like conspiracy, which is really neither here nor there. But politically,
If it is proper justice, or if it's the gimmick of the courts.
No, if it's proper justice,
Uh-huh.
you will not find the cabinet secretary responsible, because he's not
The accounting officer.
likely to have been in the procurement. He's not like he is nowhere.
Yeah, that's what you are saying.
Politically, you will find him responsible, and you will That's why the select process, the parliament process, is the right process for him, because it's just an impeachment. But criminal, maybe the few fellows, and even those ones who are in court, it will be a long battle to try and assign a criminal, case against them, because it is not as easy as it is. This is not now politics. Once you go into court, it's about the evidence, and it's about the probative value of that evidence. And if it's not there, it is not there.
Right.
And again,
We need to
this is a
break, I
cartel.
think, yes.
Yeah, this is a cartel. There are very many people who are involved in the whole process.
true.
So who are you going to jail? Who are you going to, it's a long process, even if you follow the court process. But what we are saying here, if we have to advise the president, is to make some changes to paint a good picture of the ministry, because already it is tainted that it's a corrupt ministry headed by the CS.
So
Yeah, but
the question
he
is,
can-
will he remain as a cabinet secretary or not?
I think
At the end of the day.
president, of course,
Yeah,
will
the
decide.
Senate-
Make a
I feel it,
decision.
yeah?
Yeah, we'll make a decision.
You
We'll
You
use his wisdom.
see, the point we are
Use
making
his
is that this is not an isolated case.
Yeah.
You can say this of education, you can say this of health, you can say this of men. So Mithika is actually fitting in this scheme. He's okay. Mithika is okay.
He's being sarcastic.
He's okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
He's being sarcastic.
Let's bring sarcastic.
With any
Yes,
royals,
let's
that
bring
was
the best
happened,
person that Mary
no,
have
no,
given
no.
us. So
no.
if you touch him, Mary will be unhappy.
No. We are not saying that. We are talking about governance and how we should take care of various regions, not just Meru. It's all regions of Kenya.
But look here, there's a low-hanging fruit. If Mithika goes, we have Kiratu Murungi, who is just
Yeah, they
the
can
chair
get
of-
somebody else.
then
We are not
let
saying.
him go on.
We are not saying.
You won't even be affected.
No. We are not defending Mithika to remain in the ministry. We are only saying that it will affect the local people. Therefore, they can get a substitute from the
right.
same people.
Okay,
Yeah.
when we circle
That's
back,
what we are saying.
I want to know from you.
Yes.
They normally say if you're not at the seats, you don't have your seat at the table like we are, then you could be also in the menu. Yeah, and this is all about Limuru 3. Are you going to be having a seat at the table?
Yeah,
or you are Yeah, in the middle.
These guys cannot decide. They want to wait for everybody to sort out politics in Limuru and then they join.
No, he will tell us whether there is an appendage, is an epilogue, or maybe is an epilogue, an addendum, right? We'll know that from the outside. We'll take a break.
Yeah. I like that.
That's coming on a Friday.